Hello. If you're new, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We'd love to see you join our live chat Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Central Time. Make it a daily hangout. Thanks.
Welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Super excited. Big time. There you go. It just ends. Big times for Tetris. First off, welcome. How are you?
I'm a little tired. It's 6:40 in the morning where I live in Honolulu, but otherwise, great.
We appreciate you. Appreciate you waking up with us this morning. It's amazing, and I know we got you for about 20 minutes, and we're going to maximize our time with you. So first off, obviously the movie's comes out tomorrow on Apple Plus. How about you tell us a little about the movie? And I don't know, I'm beyond excited for it. I haven't seen it yet. I know some people have, but so far the reception has been really good.
Yes. So the story is about my father, Hank Rogers, who founded Tetris at CES in the 1980s and chased the rights to the Soviet Union on a tourist visa, befriends the inventor Alexei Pajitnov, and the rest is history.
So the movie comes out tomorrow on Apple Plus. We've watched the trailer a few times on the show, and everyone seems to be genuinely excited about it. I'm going to do a review of it after I watch it tomorrow, and pretty stoked for it. So you as the CEO, I think when I mentioned that you were going to be coming on, people were like, "Oh, I didn't know you could have a CEO of a video game." But I think that Tetris is like a really unique situation where Tetris is a franchise that spawned out of the 80s that has maintained relevancy for the past 40 years. So it's kind of like there being a CEO of Call of Duty or Mario, but you are that for Tetris. What kind of pressures do you feel managing a brand that has like such a legacy, both with fans and obviously personally with your father?
I didn't feel a lot of pressure until one day after I had become CEO. My dad's like, you can't just quit now, right? Like, you're carrying on a legacy. For me, like, family comes first, and so carrying on that family legacy, when you do things for your family, like, nothing stops you. And so there hasn't been that much pressure that I felt, except I think when I meet other people and how much Tetris has impacted everyone. I mean, that's the pressure, outside pressure. Yeah.
How many different versions of Tetris are there at this point?
Too many. So it's next year we're celebrating 40th anniversary, and we are basically on every single console, right? So just today, we're on all the major consoles. Any kind of device, like, we're pretty much on, and that's kind of how the brand has stayed relevant all these years, is that we want to make sure that Tetris is available wherever there is a playable game somewhere. So, I mean, in terms of how many Tetris games in the past, I mean, it's got to be, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds, my guess.
Chris B comes in the chat, says Tetris 99 versus Tetris Effect. I can't decide myself. Both are amazing. What your thoughts?
I mean, they're different, right? Tetris 99 was the first battle royale. You're targeting 99 other people and try to win. I think it's reached a younger audience with the Switch. So if you're a competitive player, I think Tetris 99 is like such a fun game, and they're always coming up with different backgrounds that you can collect. So if you're a collector of, like, Mario backgrounds or whatever, like Tetris 99. Tetris Effect, this was an idea that, Mr. Michiguchi had for a long time, taking Tetris onto a whole nother level, the surreal VR, amazing experience. If you want a trip, Tetris Effect is the one.
If you want a trip, that's awesome.
So Tetris Effect used to be called Trip. That is the code name. Internal Trip. So. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's a VR version of the game?
Well, it was VR. It's also available on all the consoles. So you don't have to have a VR headset, but that's a trip.
We have a lot of questions from our community. Okay. But before we do that, if anybody, Blabs, Travis, you guys have any questions, fire away.
I have one.
Sure.
How did your dad, I guess it is, get Andrew Lloyd Webber to compose for Tetris, which is fascinating.
I mean, that's all the team, right? The movie team. We worked with Unigram and Marv Studios with Matthew Vaughn. And so, I mean, they've done such an amazing job putting the whole movie together. We had nothing to do with that part of it.
how much input did y'all have on the movie on a day-to-day basis? Was this obviously there's going to be points in the movie I've heard you speak about. Obviously, there's points that are Hollywoodized or whatever, or embellished to make it a little more exciting. There's action scenes and such that didn't necessarily really happen. But how much input did you, your father, have on it?
Yeah, we had a lot of input because we were part of the project from the beginning. So even from like hiring the script writer Noah Pink, when he wrote the first kind of iteration, Alexi and Hank sat with him over days going over the script and, making sure that at least the Tetris part of it was correct. And also some of the things that were happening in the Soviet Union and the Japan, that those were represented correctly. Of course, there's some fiction, right? Like, I won't really get into that too much, but as much as possible, there was a lot of input from the story side. And even within like the visuals, there's a scene in the beginning where Alexi's programming on the Electronica 60, the first original Russian game. We provided them the code. And so when you look at the code, it should be, accurate into the game.
Cool.
I will say one more thing though. There was some like comment on Twitter about like, Mr. Yamauchi's playing the Tetris prototype for the first time on the Famicom, and then it's not playing the Tetris game, right? Like the right Famicom Tetris game. Well, again, it was a prototype. So, things like that happened. So I just wanted to put it out there.
Ha!
Nice.
Nice. Internet.
Stupid internet. You're so
Take
dumb.
that.
It's ridiculous. All right. So let's get to some community questions.
Okay.
Unless Blabs, do you have any before we move on?
What's it? I guess like what would be like the best or like the coolest thing that you've seen like fans do in regards to Tetris? Like you've seen so many people do covers of the theme music, like the videos, things like that. Has there been anything like mind blowing for you?
I mean, I think anytime I see anybody with a Tetris tattoo, that is
That's cool.
I think that, and anytime there's music or songs that are titled Tetris, of course. But yeah, tattoos got to be it.
Yeah, it's permanent.
Sleeper hit, and talking about music. Music obviously plays a really big role in Tetris, especially early days. The irony, I was watching the documentary From Russia with Love about because I guess it kind of spurred the interest in the Tetris movie initially. And they talked about how initially there was no music in the game, but obviously with the Game Boy and the NES version, music was actually a very, very important part of it. Sleeper Hit wants to know, what's your personal favorite music type 1, 2, or 3?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, 1 is obviously the one that you hear the most. I think I'm between 1 and 3.
I was always a 3 guy myself, personally. Yeah. Okay.
I'm still upset that the main song that pops in my head. Dun, 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 dun,
Right.
dun, 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 dun. That one was not even on there.
Yeah,
And
I was
when
like,
I
wait,
think
where is
Tetris, when I think Tetris, that's the song.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
my first game that I ever owned was Tetris. I got the Game Boy Tetris pack in like 1990 for my like 6th birthday. I was so hyped, and I just played that's all I got. It was just Tetris, and I love that game, and that song came up the most.
Well, for sure. I mean, that is the theme song of Tetris that is on every single game. So
Yeah.
Isn't that the song was based off of a Russian folk tale about some guy trying to win a girl's heart or something like that?
yes, so it's a Russian folk song, a famous song, and I think it was for the Game Boy when Hank got involved. He wanted to put that theme song on there. And so since then, because it's such an old song and it was sort of public property, we have the rights to the song now. So people have to come to us for permission if they want to use it, because it's synonymous with Tetris today.
So are we going to get a copyright strike because of my wonderful singing there?
Singing is okay, but don't use it on a product.
Okay. All right. We're good.
And we certainly would not call side scrollers a product at this point. Quiznos wants to know, what is the process of getting a new version of Tetris made or approved? And we'll start there. And then he wants to know what your favorite version of Tetris is.
Okay. Well, I mean, so we're basically the agent of Tetris, which means that we're not making our own products, but we work with different people, like licensees, to make it. So an example of like Tetris 99, we work with Nintendo and their developer. And so we're involved from the very beginning, kind of teaching them like what are the do's and don'ts. And throughout the production process, we're approving everything and making sure that the gameplay is consistent. So we do that with all of our partners.
Nice.
Bubbly Boy apparently is a.
Yeah, there was
Go
a
ahead. I'm sorry. Oh yes, there was. What was your favorite version?
I mean, I think that's hard to say, but the favorite one, the one that strikes me the most, is the Game Boy, because that's kind of what I grew up on.
Let's go.
We have a lot of Tetris is fascinating because I was watching another interview with your dad, and he was speaking about kind of one of the next steps they'd like to get into is kind of the esports realm of Tetris, and kind of taking the next step. They feel like it's a area that hasn't really been touched. There's competitive Tetris, but not necessarily esports Tetris. But there are people who are extremely passionate. There's a couple different. There's like classic Tetris, and now there's like modern Tetris, and it's almost like it's the same community with two different, like one umbrella with two different, I guess, play styles. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So the Classic World Championship guys have been around for a while, and we support them every year. They're using the NES version of Tetris, right? And so initially, when they were competing, it was like people my age competing that grew up on the NES, and now it's like 16-year-olds beating the 40-year-olds. And so that community exists and strong. And then recently we started a Tetris Effect kind of competition community. So they actually also compete at the same event. And that's like the new spawn of current Tetris players. It's hard to compete with the two because the games are so different now. Now like we have a bag system. So every 7 Tetraminos, I think one of you guys talked about like, oh, I played Tetris and then I didn't get the eyepiece for like, forever.
That was me.
We make sure that like every 7 piece you'll get an eyepiece, and so like that's been modernized. I think the older ones don't have that, and so it makes it hard. And like things like hard drop, now you can move the pieces around once they land. Well, before you couldn't do that, and of course there's the controller. So esports, like we'd love to get into it. I think it's really kind of the chicken or egg situation, right? What is the game that takes off? Because I think in my mind, right, esports games happen naturally. There's already a competition format, and the fans kind of spur up and make this competition work. And so it takes us and also our developer licensee, like Nintendo, hello, to want to make it happen.
It's interesting you mentioned the differences between the two styles. I've witnessed the fans argue whether when what you just mentioned, but that you can move it once it hits the ground, or you can hold one to the side to like swap. There's a definitive argument between the OGs that are like, that's not real Tetris, that's cheating, like that makes it easy, which I mean, it makes it easier, or makes it more interactive in a way too. I love both Tetris. I mean, the Game Boy Tetris, you didn't have that stuff. It was just like, it was down, you're done, and that was it. So that's what I grew up on, but I enjoy the new version.
Hank, my dad used to always say, well, it's kind of like, okay, are you driving like the Model T, or are you driving the new Lamborghini, right? Like You can't argue, like they're both good. I mean, maybe Model T, maybe not, but like classic car versus like a modern car today, right? Like that's kind of the comparison, is that cars are going to continue to evolve, and Tetris also has to evolve, but remain at the core the same thing.
Yeah.
Bubbly Boy has a question. He wants to know, is the triple T spin a glitch or a feature? Do you know what that is?
Yeah. I'm sure that, it's not a glitch. I mean, I'm sure that it was after the T spin was created that somebody figured it out,
They always find a way. Back here, Tardis asks, was it Tetris or Sega that first brought up putting Tetris on the Genesis Mini?
It was Sega.
Sega came to you. That's interesting.
They wanted it.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Trav.
So you said that Tetris on Game Boy was your favorite. Do you think, and this is pure speculation, do you think that the Game Boy success may have been tied to Tetris being released with it, or vice versa?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the US, in the West, in Japan was a separate product, but when they combined it together, I mean, that was a game changer, and I really do think that it changed everything for Nintendo and Game Boy.
Say this, I've spoken about this in the past, where one of my first memories of Tetris on the Game Boy was going over to my buddy's house. There's a line about, you said Hank went in and asked, like, do you want to sell to little boys, or do you want to sell to their moms? And I remember very vividly going to my friend's house, us playing Kid Icarus on the NES, and his mom being in the kitchen with a cigarette hanging out her mouth, playing Tetris as hard as she could, and that's like what she did all day. Going crazy. So I think your dad was right along the way.
He was, and that is a line in the film, in the movie. If you want to sell, Game Boy to a bunch of boys, then put it together with Mario. But if you want to sell it to everyone, package it with Tetris.
So several other community questions. I think these are awesome questions. Swift Heracross wants to know, what was it like crossing over with the Puyo Puyo franchise?
Yeah, so when Sega approached us for that too, there was some internal debate, and I had asked some of my friends too, outside of kind of our company, in the game industry, like, what do you think about collaborating a Puyo Puyo game, which is a very famous puzzle matching game in Japan, and Tetris. And we decided to go for it, and it's become such an amazing hit. I think it brought Puyo Puyo to the rest of the world, because it was kind of only in Japan. It was really popular, and still very popular, and people love competing on it. I'm not very. I really suck at Puyo Puyo, so I'm a Tetris girl. But
you Super J wants to know, and I just found out about this yesterday. I was fascinated by this. What do you think about the woman who married Tetris? Have you heard about this?
Yes. What do I think about it?
Do you officially sanction the marriage?
Wow.
You know what? If she wants to marry Tetris, by all means.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. It was an interesting video to watch. You guys can find it online somewhere.
I have a question.
Yes.
I had an art teacher in high school, and I loved Tetris so much, and I was listening to a lot of techno music, and I had a few different techno remixes of some different Tetris songs. And one day the art teacher said, anyone can pop a CD in, play music. We were just doing free art, whatever. And I popped my techno CD in, and the Tetris song came up. And my art teacher started flipping out. Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. Oh my gosh, I can't hear this. I can't hear this. And turns out she had to go to rehab because she had such a strong addiction to Tetris. It took over her life. She was dreaming Tetris. All she could do was think about Tetris. So she had to go to rehab for it to break her Tetris addiction. Have you heard of that happening before, of people getting so addicted to it?
Well, we've done a lot of research. Tetris is the perfect game. So independently, all these scientific research has been done to say that Tetris actually helps with PTSD. Wow. Because it takes your mind away from something. So I've never heard of somebody being addicted to Tetris and that was their issue. It's usually the other way around, right? They have some other trauma.
Yeah.
This is going to help.
It is Tetris effect that helps with PTSD, correct?
Well, no, it's not Tetris effect. Tetris effect used that line because that was a scientific research kind of conclusion. Okay. And so they use that as part of their PR.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris B came in and asked a question. Obviously, there's been a lot of videos done about Tetris, and I know we only gave you for another minute or so. I appreciate your time this morning, so we'll be quick. But Chris says, gaming historian did a documentary on Tetris and its origins. Just curious, have you had a chance to see that? It's a pretty popular video on YouTube, 600,000 views or so.
I say that I have.
Okay. Well, then I guess you wouldn't know if it did justice to what your dad had achieved. So thank you, Chris, for that. Appreciate it.
I should have watched it. Sorry, guys.
No worries. No, you don't. I'm sure there's quite a few videos about Tetris online. One other thing that you do is you are an entrepreneur and you actually have a startup company, Blue Startups.
Yes.
Doug was wondering, as an entrepreneur with a startup, what type of startups does Blue Startups invest in?
So we're based in Honolulu. So we invest in companies that are SaaS based. So anybody can create a company anywhere, right? Because we're on an island. Of course, tourism and sustainability is a big one. Gaming is one of our verticals because of Tetris. And then, so those are kind of the main three that we kind of go after. And it has to be scalable technology because we're an accelerator. We invest in things that can grow very quickly instead of take years and years of research.
Awesome. So looking to get things that just scale exponentially as fast as you can. So ultimately your investment goes. Silver Cyborg, we got just one last quick one. I know you got to get out here. Silver Cyborg wants to know, how do you protect an IP like Tetris, which has almost seen as a genre onto itself.
Well, we're very unique in that we're one of the only kind of game forms that is protected. So like compare us to Match 3. Match 3 isn't protected, so anybody can make a Match 3 game. Well, nobody can make a Tetris game. So, oh, hi, there's the maintenance guy.
Let's go.
So we protect it, anytime. Some people think that it's a free game, but it's not. And so we do protect the IP, and that helps the game stay relevant and stay true. A lot of people do make money off of like the likeness of Tetris because it is so universal. Hey, guy, there's a sign on the window outside where I'm in my condo anyway.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, it's fine.
You're living. No big deal. No big deal. No, it's life.
All good.
But actually, one last thing before we let you go. There was a lot of questions about columns when that came out on the Genesis, and that was kind of seen as like the Genesis version of Tetris, right? It was obviously different, but what was the initial response to that? Was there any like angst or anger or I don't know? Kind of walk us through that. I know it was a long time ago, but
yeah, it's a long time ago. I don't think I can comment on it because oh my gosh, I'm like Googling columns. I know. Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't comment on it. This is a Hank question.
Okay, cool. Just curious.
Okay.
Well, is there anything else you feel like you like to add this morning? But once again, we appreciate you taking time this morning and before getting up and get going for the day. But what else should we know?
Watch the movie. It comes out tomorrow. Apple Plus. It'll live there forever.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we really genuinely appreciate your time this morning. Everyone, go watch Tetris tomorrow on Apple Plus. Maya, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
All right. Thank you.
Wasn't that fun? Yeah, it was. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button by clicking my face to never miss an episode Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Central Time. We are live, and we'd love for you to be a part of our community. Thanks.